Hello, I'm Allison, and welcome to another episode of Listen Now, Read Later, the podcast that leads you to your next favorite novel by reading you short stories. As always, we will be tying together short fiction and long-form fiction so that after you listen now, you can read later. Today we'll be reading 2 stories by Aimee Bender, and then Tricia will tell you why we have the perfect novel for you to read if today's stories were your cup of tea. While the last episode tied a short story from the 19th century to a 21st century novel, this episode is firmly in the modern era with 2 great short stories from the 90s. Episode 2, What Women Want. Our first story, Call My Name, was originally published in 1998 in North American Review, and the second story, What You Left in the Ditch, was originally published in 1997 in the Antioch Review. Both of these are by Aimee Bender, who is the author of 6 books, including The Girl in the Flammable Skirt, which is the short story collection that includes both of today's stories. Known for her distinctive blend of the real and the fantastical, Bender has won many awards for her fiction. She also teaches creative writing at the University of Southern California. Today's stories are read by her permission from The Girl in the Flammable Skirt. Call My Name by Aimee Bender.
I'm spending the afternoon auditioning men. They don't know it. It's a secret audition. Come as you are. No, really, I say to the beanpole man on the Muni, with eyes so tired you can see death lounging in them already. Do you prefer cats or dogs? He smiles at me in this tolerant way. I can't tell you exactly what I'm looking for, but I'll know it when it happens. I want to be breathless and weak, crumbled by the entrance of another person inside my soul. I want to be violated by insight. Cats, no question, he says, pill rolling with his fingers. He's drugged out. I don't care. What I care about is dogs, and I'm disappointed. I thank him, run a hand through my hair, and go back to sitting at my surveillance spot, front row, facing backwards right behind the driver who winked at me when I came on. I wear dresses on the subway. I have a lot of money from my dead father who invented the adhesive wall hook. He invented it when he was in his 20s, and it hit the world like a tornado. No one cares for nails anymore. He died when I was 3, so I never knew him enough to miss him, and there are millions of dollars for me and my mom, and she isn't a spender. So it's just me. It's all me. I don't much like expensive cars or gourmet dinners. What I love are fancy dresses. Today, I am wearing maroon satin, a floor-length dress with a V back and matching sandals with crisscross straps up my ankles. My ears are lit by simple diamond earrings. I look like I should know how to waltz, and I do. The men are pleased when I come on the subway because I am the type who usually drives her own car. I am not your average subway girl, wearing black pants and reading a novel the whole time so you can't even get eye contact. Me, I look at them and smile at them, and they love it. I bet they talk about me at the dinner table. I give boring people something to discuss over corn. The beanpole man stands up to exit and nods at me. I wiggle my fingers by. His death eyes crinkle up in a wise way, and I almost want to chase after him. Have him look down on me with that look and tell me something brilliant about myself. Unveil my whole me with one shining sentence. But there's really no point. He couldn't do it. His eyes crinkle up because he's been in the sun too much. He doesn't even know my name. I think I'm done, that I've checked out the whole car. When I see that behind the older woman in the dull beige suit who keeps trying to sleep, there is someone I didn't notice before. The shy man. He is leaning against the window, wanting a cigarette and not looking at me. I go sit right next to him. If you smoke out the window, I tell him in a low voice, no one will notice. What? He's about 10 years older than I am, and his eyes are bright, watery even. I won't tell if you smoke. He gets it and blinks. Thanks, he says, but he doesn't move. My dress is slithering all over the orange plastic seat, sounding like a holiday. So what's your name? I ask. He has his head looking out the window, watching the dark cement flash by. The back of his hair is matted down, like he's just woken up from a nap. Or where are you going? I say louder. He turns to me, eyebrows up. I lean in a little. My hair falls forward and I can smell my shampoo, which smells like almonds. I'm just curious, I say. What stop? Powell, he says. Your hair smells like almonds. I'm so pleased he noticed. Do you prefer cats or dogs? I ask him, even though I don't really, at this exact second, need to know. You ask a lot of questions, he says. Yes, well, what? My dress isn't holding to the seat. I could slide right down to the floor. I prefer, he says, whichever turns around when you call its name. He may be shy, but he looks me in the eye the whole time. The train strains to a stop, and he stands up to slide past me, but I'm up with him. The bottom of my dress is dusty from the floor of the subway, and I'm thinking it looks sort of vintage that way. He presses on the handle, and he's out the door really fast, and I just barely have a moment to look at the car I've been surveying and watch the people watch me exit. A man with a briefcase smiles back, but the women all ignore me. I float behind the shy man for a few blocks. He's up the escalator and onto Market Street and doesn't notice my burgundy shadow behind him until he ducks into a retail shoe store, and then I'm hard to miss. The salesgirls are all on me in 1 second. I have purchase written all over me. So they think this is a lame shoe store. Hey, says the man, you following me? Maybe. I saunter over to a pair of shoes and pick them up even though they're so ugly and poorly made. Those are one of our best sellers, says salesgirl number 1 who has lipstick on her front tooth. That is not a good selling point for me, I tell her, and you have lipstick on your tooth. Her head ducks down and she rubs her forefinger on it. Thanks, she says in a quiet whisper, like it's a secret. I hate that. The man has left the store. 1 second of conversation with the stupid salesgirl on my stupid part, and he's gone. The store owner is behind the counter watching me glance around at the rack of shoes, and he tilts his head, indicating the staircase behind him. You his girlfriend, he says. Maybe, I say again. Really, if the shy man didn't care at all, if he hadn't looked at me with a certain sly hunger, then I wouldn't be here. But he was half there with me. I saw him thinking about the heavy sound the satin would make piled on his floor. I saw him wondering. He may have wondered very quietly, but it still counts. I thank the store manager by placing one solid hand on his shoulder and squeezing it. Maybe someday I'll come in here and buy 14 pairs of shoes from him. Not like I'd wear them, but I could go give them to homeless people who might like a change every now and then. I'll buy practical shoes, cushioned shoes, no heels or anything. You probably walk a lot when you're homeless, so heels would not be a good choice. The staircase is fairly dark, but you can still sense the glare of the daylight outside, so it doesn't feel scary, just cool and slightly musty. Luckily, there's only one apartment at the top of the staircase. I try the door, and it's open. For me, it's more nerve-wracking to knock than to just go in. He's sitting in his living room with a beer and no shirt, watching TV. He looks at me, sort of amused, not really surprised. Persistent dress lady, he says. You are one persistent cookie. I love being called Cookie. I love it. I love it. I go to sit next to him on the couch. Do you know how to waltz? I ask. He flips a few channels and then turns off the TV. So what's the deal? He says. Are you a prostitute? The thing is, I'm not offended. It makes me feel like he's getting the sexual vibe, which makes me feel good. You know, alive. No, I say. I just like you. Do you have plans tonight? It's Friday night. Maybe we can do something. I have plans tonight, he says. He looks at his watch. It's 2:00 in 6 hours. His chest is tan and a little bit doughy, soft nipples that look like a woman's. For some reason, it's hard for me to even look at those nipples. They look so fragile, like fruit pulp waiting to be cut into wedges and served up in an exotic kiwi salad. It makes me want to crawl on top of him and put my thumbs on his soft, fruity nipples and press down on them hard like they're elevator buttons. Hey, baby, take me to a higher floor. I wonder if he's feeling lucky. I mean, how often does a beautiful girl follow you home and come into your house? That's lucky. That's what guys wish for. So, he leans back on his couch and grabs a cigarette from the side table. I knew it. I suppose I'd like to cut that dress right off you. Really? Yep. He takes a long drag off his cigarette and then stubs it out. Maybe I should be scared, but I'm not. There's the sound of all the cars and buses going by on Market Street, and it reassures me. Knife or scissors? He smiles. Knife, he says. I don't know, I say. That's a little much, I think, for me. Scissors. He relights the butt in the ashtray and smokes it again. Okay, scissors. You can let go of that incredible dress as easy as that, he asks. I can. I have a bank account the size of your apartment, I'm thinking. I can see on his bathroom door an adhesive hook holding up a black t-shirt. He goes to his bedroom and comes out with a pair of orange-handled scissors. He walks slowly, even though he knows I'm watching him. Back on the couch, he doesn't sit any closer to me, but just takes the hem and slices up past my hip, waist, side of my breast, under my arm, down the sleeve, up and around to the shoulder, snip at the neck. I feel like he took a letter opener and gently opened me up. He did such a neat job of it. Leaning back on the side of his couch, he replaces the scissors and surveys his work. I smile at him. The next move should be his. I don't think I'm going to touch you, he says. I'm there, waiting, body cooled by the breeze coming in off the street through the window behind us. What? I know he can see my breast. It's right there. I can sense it out of the bottom of my eye. Nope. He stands up and looks around. What? Are you going to tie me up or something? I slide out my other arm so that my upper body is exposed. Just my legs and waist still swathed in maroon satin. His couch is Kelly green, and it's an interesting contrast. I spend a minute looking at it. Tie you up? He goes to the refrigerator and pours himself a glass of water. No, I don't do that shit. He doesn't seem to even notice that I'm half out of the dress. Hello, I say. What is going on here? You just opened up my dress. Yeah, he says. Thanks. But we have 6 hours, I tell him. You said we have 6 hours. Well, he says, sipping the water, the counter between us. What would you like to do? I'm up off the couch, which means the dress is on the floor and I'm naked in high heels, which is maybe how I've wanted to be all day. Those straps crisscrossing up my ankles like painted snakes. I take the water out of his hand and hop up on the kitchen counter and pull him to me with my feet. Then I kiss him, smoke taste still on his lips, which are cold from the water. He keeps his mouth closed, and I press my body to his. 6 hours, I say. It's a long time. Lady, he says, I don't think it's going to happen here. I wanted to cut your dress. I don't really want to fuck you. That's just not what I'm looking for today. Sorry if that was misleading. He has his water back in his hands. I take it from him and have a sip. It's just water. Yeah, well, I tell him, it was. I do think cutting up someone's dress is misleading. Stepping back, he exits my feet without difficulty and looks straight at me, into me, like he did in the subway, the way that I love. He leans against the refrigerator and a magnet drops to the floor. You want to be tied up, he says then? I'll tie you up. If I need to scream, out of the millions of people on Market Street, one of them will hear me. Someone would hear me and would do something. I can scream really, really loud. He leads me to his bedroom, which is very plain, nothing on the walls, an unmade bed. He has one chair at a desk, and he puts me in it, and goes to his closet and removes 2 belts. He starts to weave one of his belts through the slats at the back of the chair and around my hands. Bedroom or living room? He asks, his voice sort of flat. Living room, please, I say. Lifting me up in the chair, he brings me into the other room. My arms are already bound, so he begins on my legs with swift, efficient hands. The window is still open, and I'm thinking about where I should aim my scream just in case. It seems like he can't tie both legs effectively without another belt, so he reaches down and whips the one out of his jeans, which then sink a little lower on his hips. I can see the broken angle of his pelvis. His nipples are still soft. I lean down, feeling like a deer in a trap, and dare to kiss one of them. Bite it a little, those sweet, soft, fearful nipples. Hey, he says, I'm doing something here. I lean forward and try to kiss him again, but he has stepped back, and I can't move. He circles the chair and tests the belts. I arch my back. My breasts are poking out like cones. My nipples are not soft. He goes to the couch and turns on the TV. You can imagine what you want, he says. Tell me when you want to be untied. I jump the chair around some so that I can see him. What do you mean? I say. He sticks his feet up on the coffee table and starts to gently fold my dress. Just what I said. You tie me up just to tie me up? He puts the dress in a neat pile next to him and runs a hand through his hair again. Why does everyone but me look so fucking tired? I get too much sleep. He takes a deep breath. For right now, he says steadily, I'm going to watch TV. I watch with him for a minute. It's a show about Mozart, but I can't really concentrate because behind the TV is the bathroom door with the hook and I can't stop looking at it. My father was a millionaire, I want to tell him. You can't just tie up a millionaire's daughter and not fuck her. You can't just tie her up while she's naked with maroon sandals strapping her ankles and a taut stomach from 10 million sit-ups and watch television. Who do you think you are? I want to jump the chair over and pounce on him, but I can't steer it very well. So instead, I turn my head around and stare at him, first seductively, and then like a pain in the ass. He looks up after a while. Yes? I'm bored, I say. You want to go home now? But we have 6 hours. It comes out sounding whiny. I wait for him to react, but he doesn't tell me to shut up, and then unbuckle his pants and with one quick rip. His face is kind, still tired, cheeks slack. I want to lay his head on my chest and soothe him. Poor man who lives alone in this shitty apartment. Poor man. Let me love you here on the green couch for the street to see. Let me offer you something magical in the space between my breasts. Please, please, let me. Lady, he says again, you ready to go home? I'm thinking about the walk home. I'll have to go into one of those stores and buy myself another dress. I'll borrow one of his t-shirts, or if he doesn't let me, then I'll wrap the satin around me like a towel. The salesgirl will note that strange outfit, but acknowledge the fineness of the material and decide I'm a good bet. She'll tell me her name and hang up my choices while I still browse around. Maybe I'll tell her the story of this dress, but leave it open-ended. And she'll giggle, for after all, I'm the customer. I'll take a cab home in the new glorious brocade cream-colored gown. My apartment is big, and I have a big TV. I have a velvet couch, and it's one of a kind. I have cable. I have better reception than this stupid nipple man. I have a remote control that can work through walls. I look at him again. He's lighting up another match to continue smoking that same first cigarette. No, I tell him, slumping back down in the chair. I don't want to go home yet. He turns to look at me. Is that okay? I ask. He gives a little nod. That's fine, he says, leaning forward to change the channel. So, game show or the news? Not the news, please, I say. He clicks the knob 3 times over. The game show host looks really old. The shy man puts his elbows on his knees and he starts to call out answers to the trivia questions. I close my eyes and listen to the noise of winning fill the room.
We hope you enjoyed our first story. Now, here's What You Left in the Ditch by Aimee Bender.
Stephen returned from the war without lips. This is quite a shock, said his wife Mary, who had spent the last 6 months knitting sweaters and avoiding a certain grocery store where a certain young man worked and looked at her in a certain way. I expected lips, dead or alive, but with lips. Stephen went into the living room where his old favorite chair stood, neatly dusted and unused. I can eat like normal, he said, in a strange, halted, clacking tone, due to the plastic disc that covered and protected what was left of his mouth, like the end of a pacifier. The doctors are going to put new skin on in a few weeks anyway. Skin from my palm. He lifted up his hand and looked at it. That will work, I guess, he said. It just won't be quite the same. No, said Mary, it won't. That bomb, she said, standing on the other side of the chair. You know it took the last real kiss from you forever, and as far as I can remember, that kiss was supposed to be mine. That night in bed, he grazed the disc over her raised nipples like a UFO, and the plastic was cool on her skin. It felt like they were in college and toying with desk items as sexual objects. Her boyfriend of that time, Hank. Let's try a ruler. Let's measure you, Mary. Let's balance a paperweight on my dick. I'm over that, Mary thought. I want lips now. I just want the basics. She didn't say anything, but began to shop at the other grocery store again. The young man there had always had lips, but now they seemed twice as large and full and incredible, as if his face was overflowing with lip. While he ran her milk and eggs and toothpaste over the electric sensor, she couldn't stop looking at them, guessing what they tasted like, the warm, salty taste of flesh. Good to see you, he said, moving those lips. It's been a while. Mary blushed and fiddled with the gum at the counter. Just take a pack, he told her. I won't tell. Really? She looked at the flavors and picked cinnamon. Sure, he said, smiling at her, glancing around to see if his manager was in sight. Think of me while you chew. She blushed again, pocketed the gum, and then grabbed her 2 full bags in both arms. Need help? He asked. Let me help you. Okay. She passed the weight to him, and he walked her to the car, which was parked near the river. While he placed the bags into the trunk, she was taken by the desire to join them. She wanted to sit in there and invite the man in with her, shut the trunk down and lock it, and just make love and eat groceries until they suffocated or her husband needed the car. Back at home, Stephen was in the bathroom, looking at himself in the mirror. Mary stood and watched him touching the disc with his fingertips, a bag under each arm, until he felt her and turned around. Honey, he said, back so soon. He took the bags from her, peered inside them, and oohed and awed over her food choices. Oh, Mary, he said, God, I missed you so much. In that ditch, when I thought of you, I saw an angel. His voice broke. I saw Mary, my angel, in this house with these bags. You brought me back home. He reached out his hand, and fingers trickled down her arm. She kept her back to him and shoved tin cans into the cupboard. Maybe, she was thinking, if you'd concentrated better, you'd still have lips. Maybe you're not supposed to think of your wife at the market while people are throwing bombs at you. Maybe you're supposed to protect certain body parts so she'll be happy when you come back. But instead, she just piled cans, one on the other, edge to edge in tall buildings, kidney beans on top of tuna. She turned to Stephen. You're alive, she said, and hugged him. You're Stephen. He pressed the disc hard to her cheek and kissed her, and she held herself in and tried not to shatter. Stephen ate more than she remembered, so she was back at the market in 2 days. The young man was there, and she offered him a stick of the same cinnamon gum. He grinned at her. "Thanks," he said, taking a piece. She touched the back of his hand while he was writing her driver's license number on the check and said, "Do you take care of yourself?" He looked up at her. "What do you mean?" "I mean, what if they called you to fight in the war?" Her hand was still on his. He snapped his gum. He drew a little gun on the corner of her check. "No," he said, "I don't think I would do it. I think I'd run away because, I don't want to fight in the war. I mean, how would you do it anyway? How would you know what to do?" He drew little bullets coming out of the gun and sliding down the side of the check near where her name and address were printed. Mary nodded and placed her license back in her wallet. "I know," she said. "Me too. I would move away somewhere else. I wouldn't leave people and maybe never come back. You can't do that to people, you know?" "Right," he said, looking at her. "I know what you mean. The most unbearable thing is losing someone like that." "Oh, no," she said to him, wrapping the plastic handle of the bag around her wrist several times. "I don't think so. I don't agree. The most unbearable thing, I think by far," she said, "is hope." At night, Stephen twitched with nightmares. He never used to. He used to sleep straight through the night, and Mary would carve shapes into his back with her stub of a fingernail and watch those goosebumps rise and fall like small mountain populations. Now he was bucking in and out of the sheets, and she still carved the shapes and the goosebumps still emerged, but they didn't calm him. She wondered what he was seeing. Sometimes she woke him up. "Stephen," she said, "it's okay. You're here. You're back." He looked up at her with a frame of sweat around his face and breathed out. "Mary," he cracked. "It's Mary." "It's Mary," she said. "Yes, that's me." He held her so tightly she was uncomfortable. She wiggled loose and finally fell asleep for a couple hours, but woke again in the middle of the night and left the bedroom. Stephen was sleeping quietly, his back to her, arm out, palm open, belly sloping down the sheets. She tried the TV, but everything was either without plot or in the middle, so she couldn't understand what was going on. Clicking it off, she went and sat in the backyard on the edge of the patio with its red paint chipping. The sky was oddly light, but it was nowhere near morning. Leaning down into the dirt, she began to dig a hole. The dirt was grainy and soft and lifted out easily, and she wondered why she never took up gardening. "It's supposed to be so soothing," she thought. "Perhaps that is the soothing that I need." She leaned down into the dirt and dug until there was a hole a few feet deep. She placed her feet in it. "I built this hole," she said. "Now what to put in it?" She wandered in through the kitchen to the hall closet, opened it, and saw the 3 sweaters she knit for Stephen at war piled on the shelf by the sewing machine. "There," she said, "my sweaters. He won't want these. No one wears sweaters here anyway." She lugged all 3 sweaters outside and gently folded them, placing them on top of each other in the hole. She remembered knitting them, singing songs into the thread about Stephen, pretending she was keeping him alive, although she knew he was dead. He had to be dead. She was just more honest with herself than the other wives. With each purl and knit and knot, she felt the coldness of her stiffening legs, the draining of color from her cheeks, knew that never would she feel his forearms warm and veined around her waist, never again would his voice whisper praise into her ear. She let the dirt dribble through her fingers over the pile of sweaters, and it slid down the sides, slowly filling the space, covering the colorful sleeves. Dead sweaters, she thought. Isn't that funny, the way it turned out? At the grocery store, the young man was wearing a gray button-up shirt and looked particularly handsome. "I was hoping you'd come in," he told her. "I was thinking about you." "Really?" His skin was so young, so new. "I get off in just a few minutes." He looked at his watch. "Do you want to go on a walk or something? We're right by the river, and I could use a break before I go home." She watched the bag packer put the eggs haphazardly on top. "Sure," she said. "Why not?" She packed the bags into her trunk again, and after a beat, pulled out the bouquet of gardenias that she'd bought because they'd smelled so strong. She waited for the young man, feeling like a bride. After a minute, he exited the store without his apron, let loose, looking younger. "This way," he said. "Come this way. Nice flowers." She felt embarrassed and asked him to hold them for her, which he did, blooms down. They walked side by side, and she was aware of his breathing, easy and confident, and aware of his lips. Lips, she thought. I really, really miss lips. The river leapt over stones, gurgling as rivers do. Its voice lowered and deepened as they walked, and the young man told her about his life, about how this was his summer job away from college, and one day he wanted to own an art supply store. Interesting, she told him. That will be an interesting store to own. You will buy many different colors of paint. Yes, he said, I like paint. The river was speeding up. It made a rushing noise, rocks breaking up the water into foam. I want to throw myself in, she thought. I want to crack up on those rocks. She looked at the young man. Can you swim? She asked. Oh, yeah, he said. I'm a great swimmer. Would you rescue me, she said, if I went in? Because I'm not a good swimmer. Went in that? He pointed to the river, just in case there was a choice he didn't know about. It's cold in that, he said, and fast. Not a good idea to go in there if you can't swim. But, like I said, she said, would you save me? He seemed confused. This was not what he expected from her. I guess I'd try, he said. You know, if it was really dangerous. He took a step back. She walked to him. I'm glad, she said. He stepped down to a lower plane, so he was suddenly her height, and she moved into his face and kissed those lips, reminded herself. They were so soft. She kissed him for a moment, and then she had to move away. They were too soft. The softness was killing her. Hey, said the young man. Nice. Mary sat down on the ground and felt as if she could not possibly survive with something that soft in the world with her. The two of them could not exist together. No. The young man sat down. He wanted to kiss her again, but she said, I have to go now. Did I tell you I was married? No, he said. I didn't know you were married. He looked to her hand and pointed to the ring. Oh, right. Check it out. Cool. She thought about Stephen and the disc and about pressing her lips down on those plastic curves, pushing hard on them until she pressed her face into his, pushed past his skin and through his bone and into the quiet, warm space underneath, her eyes shut, cell to cell, both unarmed. In there, she thought, inside his mind and flooded with blood, without windows or doors or her knitting or his chair, maybe in there she could hold their faces in her hands and consider something like forgiveness. She stood up, and the young man reached out his unflowered hand, wanting to pull her to him, wanting her attention again. Really, he said, I would rescue you, you know, what you were saying before. Yeah, she said, I'm sure you'd try. She started back along the path, and he followed her. He was so young. He just talked about himself again, and she turned out and watched the shadows of the trees cut lines into the ground. She kicked a few rocks. Back in the parking lot, she held out her hand and grasped his for a second. He had a firm grip. Come back. I'll give you more free gum, he said, handing her back the flowers. Okay, she said. I can always use free gum. He walked away, looking confused, not really sure what happened, if he was rejected or not. Mary threw the gardenias into the passenger seat, climbed into her car, and drove home. She forgot the rest of the groceries and left them in the trunk. Later, when she went to get them, it was only the milk that had spoiled, releasing its warm, dank odor into the air. Instead, she scooped up the flowers and went in to see Stephen. He was in his chair taking a nap. She stood above him and watched him twitch, his hands fluttering as if he'd been drugged. He was in her house, her husband, the love of her life. He was back. He made it. He left. He returned. She wanted to know him again, to enter the nightmare and be in there with him, to fight the demons with her own good weapons. She wanted to join him, but the chair was too small, and his brain was his only, and all she saw in the ditch were sweaters and a too light sky. She reached out to shake him awake, but her hand stopped in the air and wouldn't go further. No hand was reaching out for her. Stirring in his sleep, he let out a clipped yell. Mary kneeled on the carpet. Stephen, she whispered, I miss you so, but everything is fine at home. Stephen, she said, the neighbor's got a dog, and I am growing out my hair. She bowed her head. Removing the plastic wrap, she very carefully kissed the bouquet of gardenias and then placed it onto his stomach. Here, love, she said, I brought you some flowers. She kept her head low. Stephen stirred and, eyes blinking, woke up to the smell of the gardenias. Mary, he said, flowers, how beautiful.
Now that you've listened, here's what to read later. Our team loved the main characters in Aimee Bender's stories. Each woman is the most unconventional kind of likable. Despite their odd goals and questionable morals, you can't help but root for them. It's just so refreshing to read such unique personalities. Packaged in such snappy, quirky tales, we had a great time getting to know Bender's work and sharing it with you. If you're hooked on this type of character as much as we are, we highly recommend The Shadows Between Us by Tricia Levenseller. Alessandra is a murderer, but really, it was a reasonable reaction. Her first love broke her heart, and he got what he deserved. Now, Alessandra is more interested in power than love, and she has her sights set on the highest prize of all, Callias, the despised king of their land. All she has to do is seduce him, kill him, and then have the kingdom all to herself. It's a simple and easy plan, and she even has the experience to carry it out. Yet when she meets Callias, Alessandra is surprised to find there's more to him than he seems, and she may have met her match. This book is the perfect follow-up to Aimee Bender's stories. Alessandra is a delightfully unlikable character, and you find yourself agreeing that she should get everything she wants. As a standalone, the book itself is perfect for anyone looking to cure a book hangover or start something new. The book hooks you immediately, and it's impossible to put down. So if you adored Aimee Bender's short stories, then you have to read The Shadows Between Us by Tricia Levenseller. Thanks for listening to this episode of Listen, I'll Read Later. Follow us on Instagram for fun extras and updates on our next episode. Now it's time for you to go read the book, and we'll catch you when you listen later.